Welcome to Coffee and RPGs. My name is Solomon S. Kane. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of MMO and RPG News Roundup. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday, but we do have a lot of news to cover, so if you guys got your beverage of choice, let's cover the news together. Cheers to you guys. Really quick before we begin, heading on over to massivelyop.com, WoW Classic player mimics South Park by grinding to 60 on Boars Alone, and the YouTuber in question goes by the name of Dr. 5. So if you want to check out his video, definitely head on over to the pinned comment section below where I have the link to this article. So the first bit of news comes from MMORPG.com. Phantasy Star Online 2 will be released on Windows 10 PC on May 27th. Finally, we got a release date for the PC version of this game. So I'm not going to be covering too much information about this just because we already know so much already from the Xbox version. And from what I could tell, they're pretty much going to be more or less going to be the exact same thing because they are cross-compatible. So if you have friends on the Xbox version, you can play with them if you always wanted to play on the PC. So really quick, they did release a press release, and it goes on to read, the North American version of Phantasy Star Online 2 includes fully localized text and character voices in English, spanning 3 years of content. The North American version also features the most up-to-date balance and quality of life improvements from the Japanese service. Players can choose from 4 races and 9 classes. And again, to reiterate, for the first time they will be able to do all of this with friends on both PC and Xbox thanks to cross-platform play. And also, if you are on the Xbox version, it says, meanwhile, the Xbox One version of Phantasy Star Online 2 will be getting an in-game collaboration in its North American version, with Hatsune Miku special items coming to the MMO. And you could head on to their Microsoft store just at Microsoft.com, but as far as I can tell, they only have the Xbox Live version up as of this moment, but again, that could soon change as we get near towards the launch date. And also, really quickly, if you are curious about the score of this game, it does have a user score of 8.0, which is actually fairly good, and it seems like the critics also are more or less in the same area, with MMORPG giving it an 84 and Destructoid giving it an 80 as well. And sticking with MMORPG.com, Star Citizen shares Invictus Launch Week schedule, and it goes on to read, if you're unfamiliar with the Invictus Launch Week, it's essentially a celebration to see some of the ships through the free flight event of sorts. The event this year will take place near Area 18 ArcCorp. If you're looking for spacecraft showcases, they will be at the Bevik Convention Center. I really love how they word these things as if like there were real life locations or something like that. So it's really cool that they have defined locations in the game. And on altchar.com, Ghost of Tsushima will not force stealth. Players choose how to play, and in my opinion, this is actually really welcome news. There's a lot of games out there that I kind of wish they didn't really penalize you so much for not playing stealthy, but then again, there's a lot of people out there that would argue, well, it's mainly a stealth game, and Metal Gear Solid comes to mind for sure. But then there are other games out there that probably could have done away with the penalization, and Dishonored comes into mind. But the article does continue. In a recent interview, Ghost of Tsushima creative and art director Jason Connell discussed the protagonist Jin Sakai and his style choices, insisting that stealth is never forced onto players. Connell said that even though some Ghost of Tsushima story moments are more reflective of Jin's transformation from samurai to ghost, this is not something that will prevent you from playing exactly how you choose. And the article does seem to also suggest that you're not confined into one playstyle. You can switch it up to if you would like, so they're giving a lot of options and a lot of leeway, which again is never a bad thing for players. And from MMOculture.com, Nat Games Studio is now recruiting for PC plus console shooter RPG project. And this one's really interesting, only because I did play a few of their games, but it goes on to read, Nat Games, now a studio under Nexon, is very busy developing several new games, having launched Hit, which is the game that I actually did play for several months, as well as Overhit and more recently V4, which I'm still very interested in. There is now at least 3 more games in development. First, there is Project MX. Then most recently we knew about Hit MMO. and right now we can confirm the existence of a PC plus console, in parentheses it says next gen, first person shooter RPG project. Headed by an internal team known as Magnum Studio, this unnamed Unreal Engine 4 project is set to combine elements of both FPS and RPG with a focus on PvE content. And I think that's really welcomed news in my opinion, because these days there's just so many battle royales and team shooters such as Overwatch and Valorant. And again, they might be really good games. I personally haven't played them. They're not really my cup of tea, but I really do, or rather look forward to this game just because of the focus on the PvE content itself. And from MassivelyOP.com, Neverwinter is planning a patch to address issues with the Rage of Build meter on PC. And I did cover this last week, and it is a system where the entire server gets together and kill demons or monsters or whatever they are to fill up a meter. When the meter is filled, the bell comes out, but it seems like they're having some issues. It goes on to read, it turns out that the whole thing has had some cascading issues, starting with the meter being inconsistent based on the instance you're in, then the cooldown period and energy rates were slow for some players. The plan is to patch to be out later this week, but the exact date is not very clear yet, unfortunately. And sticking with MassivelyOP.com, there is a candidate system for this game where you get to elect people for the console of stellar management that has its own sort of political system within the game. So it goes on to read, CCP Games has shared the list of 40 candidates who are up to vote. This officially kicks off the campaigning period for the CSM hopefuls, and that campaigning runs between now and May 29th. So if you want to cast your vote, here's your chance to do so. And really quick, over at Gematsu.com, Mafia Definitive Edition launches August 28th. Mafia 2 and 3 Definitive Editions now available. Mafia Definitive Edition will launch both physically and digitally for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, as well as for the PC via Steam and Epic Game Store, and even Stadia. That kind of surprised me. Stadia on August 28th for $39.99, and the physical copy is available as well for $59.99. And I wanted to really quick mention Games Radar, based on the same game, but their headline more or less feels how I feel about the game right now. Mafia 2 Definitive Edition is the perfect opportunity to discover a forgotten classic. So this is one of those games that's always been on my to-do list, but I never got around to it, and all these years passed, and now it's a little too late. But now that this version is out, hopefully I will be getting into it just because I really love the lore and the setting of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And from PCGamer.com, your Fallout 76 allies will now wear your spare clothes if you let them. The Fallout 76 Wastelanders update added allies, which are basically limited versions of companions from previous Fallout games. Today's release of Update 19, which adds an ally customization option that enables players to share their wardrobe with their digital pals. Everything but power armor and weapons can be applied, and also it's strictly cosmetic, so no bonus or buffs for them. And back on over to MassivelyOP.com, Ship of Heroes is enthusiastic about Unreal Engine 5, but practical implementation is a long way off. Heroic Games released a whole dev blog explaining how Unreal Engine 5 will improve Ship of Heroes lot, focusing on the amazing global illumination and extremely high poly art resources as well. But they also say that MMOs generally take 4+ years to develop, so don't expect any MMO natively built in Unreal Engine 5 to launch before 2026 at the earliest. Which is good to know. I'll definitely take their word over my own, that's for sure. And sticking with MassivelyOP.com, Project Gorgon's next update, quote, a couple weeks away, but will let you breed your pets. And this is an interesting take on, I guess, game mechanics. But it does go on to read that the indie MMORPG said that it's putting the finishing touches on its animal husbandry skill line, which will allow players to mix and match pets and see what variants can be produced. It's definitely interesting. Not really sure if it's my cup of tea, but I think it's really worth checking out at least. Back on over to MMORPG.com, MapleStory for the Southeastern Asian servers receives the Adele class. I believe I'm saying that correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. But it does go on to read, Adele is described as a new warrior from the High Flora race of Granis. Known for its high DPS, Adele uses a tuner to create ether swords, which are used as weapons that can be controlled safely using her strong willpower. And for some things that could have been, we head on over to PCGamer.com. The Witcher 3 nearly made Ciri a deadly ice skater, but this isn't just random. It does go on to read principal writer Jacob Shazamalik, I keep butchering his name, I do apologize, said that we plan to have a sequence where Ciri fights enemies on a frozen lake, a reference to a similar scene in one of the books, but preparing that sequence proved extremely complicated. Back on over to MassivelyOP.com, the crew previews the joy of collections with the upcoming Hobbies update. A brief new video shows off specifically that collecting is one of the hobbies that can, or they're being highlighted. There are 100 challenges for collectors to, well, collect, including different front bumpers, different Lamborghini cars, different tires, and so on. And sticking with MassivelyOP.com, CorePunk talks about monster camps and delays its next gameplay video debut. He goes on to read that players will run into monster camps for the challenge as well as for the loot. Each monster camp has a different difficulty level, and monsters in camps will have different variables like unique skills, a leader among the group, and the promise of AI that assists each other and fights as coordinated teams. Of course, the harder the camp, the greater the rewards. That actually sounds really interesting to me. I know there's a lot of MMOs out there that seem a little bland just because you kind of go up to them and mow them down. But then if they are able to coordinate with each other, or at least seem like they are a cohesive unit, it kind of gives you the illusion that they actually are part of the world and they're not just random, just mindless NPCs that you just go to show up and kill. So at least that's what my expectations are just from reading that sentence alone. But it does go on to read that the gameplay preview video that was set to premiere this month has been delayed because of working at home, because of the thing that I can't really talk about because YouTube is being YouTube. Heading back over to MMORPG.com, 99 Problems event returns to Defiance and Defiance 2050. The event is currently live and is set to run until June 15th, so if you have ample time to participate, should you desire. The event is available across PC, PS4, and Xbox One across all regions for all platforms. And really quick, from MassivelyOP.com, EverQuest to begins server merges. Should be probably done by now by the time this video comes out. EverQuest 2 tweaks challenge, raids, and latest updates. So again, if you have any characters or accounts in those games, you probably want to go ahead and check if you still have your name, if you still care about that kind of stuff. And from MMORPG.com, Blizzard outlines World of Warcraft corruption and cloak changes. It goes on to read the overall goal of this update is to ultimately speed up power progression for new level 120 characters. To that end, the post touches on echoes of Neoltha. I'm saying that wrong, I do apologize, and how they will be far more abundant. Regarding corruptions, Mother will also offer a random selection of preserved containments. The post also offers sample costs of these updated offerings. And admittedly, I really wanted to make this the thumbnail for today's episode, but then I found out that Fire Emblem Heroes is a mobile title, so I ditched that idea because I have standards. But if you want to see some of your waifus in a wedding dress or a tuxedo, I don't judge. The new event will go live on May 20th. And again, Fire Emblem Heroes is available on iOS and Android devices. So there you have it. And that concludes today's episode of MMO and RPG News Roundup. I do appreciate if you made it with me so far. The watch time does help with the algorithms. And if you haven't done so, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell notification too, as those two help with the algorithms as well, considering I'm still a relatively new and small YouTube channel. But in any event, guys, I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. Have a blessed night, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers again, everyone.